Welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the cosmos from independent validator teams.
Hello and welcome to Game of Nodes, everybody, the podcast about the cosmos from independent validator teams. On this week's episode, we have a few of our members that are down with probably cosmos-induced fatigue. So we're expecting some drop-ins a little bit later on. But we've reached out to fill our panel, and we've got Deemy here today to join us. Thanks for coming, Deemy, on incredibly short notice. I think we only just realised that a lot of people weren't available this morning for various reasons. I think Alec, the Fray, has been working quite hard on the upgrades and the testing on Scotty. So I think he's a little bit worn out at the moment. And Jabby is deep in data, and I don't think he can pull himself away. And then we've got, Jack has showed up.
Oh, hey.
Hello. Hey, yeah, mate. So we're just talking about our lack of people today, but, four's good too. So I think we can expect potentially Blockpain to drop in a little bit later. And I'm not sure who else said they were coming, but, I'm not sure if I mentioned Usurper. He's pretty crook at the moment, so he won't be coming. And, so welcome everybody. And I think we usually start with a question, right, Schultzy?
Yeah, though, to be honest with you, I can't think of an example of the dumbest thing that happened this week. Oh, we've got Todd on? I mean, you've got a selection. You've got, Prompt 19 to work with. You've got other bits and bobs, but I don't know. That feels kind of unsatisfying and played out at this point.
Yeah, I think I don't really like to talk too much anymore about the old Prop 16 and all the subsequent props. That stuff's just going to play itself out. Yeah, the troubles.
We should just start calling it the troubles. I like that better.
We just jam our head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist until it comes time to vote.
You got ostriches down there, right?
We have emus.
Emus.
Yeah.
Tasty little fuckers. I do like emu jerky.
Really? I've never partaken in emu jerky. I've only seen that they chase people and it doesn't look like fun. So I try to avoid that.
I'm loosely aware of Australia going to war with the emus, but that's about as far as my knowledge goes about it.
Yeah, so that was way back in the day. We had the emu war. And I can't remember what exactly that was about, but there was a lot of emus and they came to town. And I think they either had to all get murdered or hunted out of town. But we've got camels, armies out in the outback in Australia. There's just camels, man, everywhere. There's just so many of them because they survive really well in the Australian desert. And in droughts, when there's no rain for a long time, they all decide to go to town. And that can get quite bad as well. So Jack, what is the dumbest thing or, something notable of that you've seen in the cosmos this week? You got anything to add?
I mean, I'm just, if you see me looking down, I'm trying to submit a proposal to Crescent so that I can claim the rest of my airdrop. So if you're asking about real dumb things, that's probably one of them. Let's see, what else is going on in the cosmos?
Having to submit the prop was dumb, that there was none available to claim your airdrop?
Yeah, I think that's dumb, but also having a governance proposal whose purpose of which is only to vote to claim airdrop is okay.
Anyway. It's not the first network to do it.
Stargaze had them numbered. They had 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, I think it was one. What was it one of Schultzy? Do you remember who was submitting those? Or Blockpain? It was someone was just one after the other submitting those bloody things. Every time they ran out. And so now my voting history is terrible on Stargaze because I kept missing it.
Yeah, I don't know about Stargaze, but I know on LUM, WhisperNub submitted something 30 proposals on there to keep the airdrops going. So it looks absolutely ridiculous on that blockchain right now.
Wow. That's really funny.
Todd, you seen anything dumb this week, man?
Yeah, I botched a proposal this week.
Hey, cheers! Nice. We've all been there.
Yeah. So,
what were the particulars of this proposal?
Oh yeah, we just wanted to raise the minimum proposal fee on Cerberus, and the description didn't match the actual parameters because we decided to change it at the last minute. And
that was the 100 million versus the 150 million.
Yeah, something, or 10 versus 15. Yeah.
I saw someone else who botched a proposal where I think they meant to say the word million a few times, but said the word billion instead. And do you know what I'm talking about, Schultzy? I can't remember. Maybe it was Cerberus as well, or
I think that is Cerberus. I think it was for the osmosis matching external incentives, where Cerberus meant to put like 1.75 billion total, and instead it added up to something like, I don't know, like 800 billion
500, 500 and 750 and one.
Yeah.
Billion.
Yeah, that one wasn't me, thankfully.
Todd, you're in good company. If you go look at the Cosmos Hub, we have a few. I remember Zucky and I put up a few failed proposals. I was just looking at the vote history on MidScan, and there's proposal number 2, atom transfer enablement, which failed because we did it wrong, and then proposal number 3 passed, and then we have a Cosmos Hub 3 upgrade proposal on there. And my absolute favorite one is there's upgrade proposal A, upgrade proposal B, upgrade proposal D, and upgrade proposal E. And if you will notice, only one of those actually worked. So the first time we tried upgrade proposals in prod, we had to try 5 times.
I remember that.
I felt like such an idiot. It was not a fun couple of days of work.
That is a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
Someone's like, yeah. So, Dimmy, do you have anything dumb that you've seen this week?
No, nothing particular comes to my mind.
No? All right. I'm usually the same way. I'm like, oh, man, it's like on the spot. I can't remember anything. But this week...
He's just like living that cool hacker house life. He's just like...
Yeah, man.
Deep in it, Snakefish hacker house.
Yeah, I'm closed here a building, so
I keep imagining that I'm there.
Reflection. Yeah, it's nice. Every time you post pictures, I'm like, oh fuck, that looks great. Yeah, look at that.
Where's that at?
Don't dox yourself.
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs. Somewhere in Palm Springs.
Okay. I'm not a huge fan of Palm Springs.
You don't want D-Gens knocking on your door, man. Can I see the pool? I've come to cleanse the pool. What have I done this week? So I botched an upgrade this week on Dig.
Oh, fun!
Yeah, well, so I tend to not do the copy paste when I do upgrades. I tend to like type it in. I don't know. It's good practice to type things in. And what happened on Dig? I like
typing things in too.
Well, I did a typo, I think, because I used Cosmovisor on Dig, and this is one of the reasons I don't like Cosmovisor.
One of the many reasons to not like Cosmovisor. Yeah,
you get like sniped all the time with Cosmovisor. But anyway, so I had planned to be out that day, and no one else was available, so I did so I pre-set up the upgrade, but I had a typo in the bloody directory. And so when it came time to do the upgrade, obviously couldn't find the binary and freaked out. But I was able to get to a terminal and repair it before we had all the votes to start up. So I didn't miss a block, but I still botched it. So that was pretty dumb.
Perfect.
Yeah, I guess, but it's hard to be there for every upgrade. It's hard to have someone available for every upgrade. And lately there's been a lot of upgrades.
It is, this is like one of the reasons why we're trying to hire at Strangelove, is to make sure that we don't have to have some kind of on-call rotation. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean you don't have an on-call rotation? How would you get around that?
How would you get around that? I mean, we do have an on-call rotation right now. There's like 2 people on the validator, but generally, because like all of the time, like the slashing times are like 18 hours. I don't wake myself up if our validator's down. I'll like wake up and I'll be like, oh, it's been down for 8 hours. Like, okay, time to recover the validator. So this is why we don't do it on call rotation, Chelsea.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Believe it or not, when we were doing the parameters for the Cosmos Hub, everyone was like, so like, what should we do this missed blocks thing? Like, should this be like 1,000? Should this be like 10,000? Should this be like 100,000? I was like, well, like, what's a short amount of time that allows somebody to like sleep for 8 hours and then wake up and have a reasonable amount of time to recover the validator? We're like, somewhere around 18 hours. We're like, great, cool, good. I think that in terms of decentralization of the validator set, that's one of those like underappreciated, really important variables. Because if it was only an hour, like, you would really have to have an on-call rotation, and it would be a lot harder. So yeah, that's how we do it, Chelsea.
Yeah, it's not so bad. Validator, 28% vote power, right?
Yeah.
What was that, Todd? Your microphone's a little bit quiet today, Todd.
Yeah.
If there's any way to like...
I'm trying to get out of the brutal light here, so I'm sitting back from my mic. Yeah.
You look like one of those dudes, like, you know, when they're doing the Anon hacker video and they've got like the light on their face.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's all fine and good unless you've got a validator with, you know, 30% vote power and they go down for 10 hours.
That is true. I wish we had that problem with Strangelove one of these days.
Or yeah, you do an upgrade and you're sitting there waiting for someone with two people with 20% to like show up when they wake up or whatever.
Upgrades are the only time where we need to really have like strong coverage. You know, how do you guys use we've got all of our Discord alerts filtering into like a common Discord channel for that. But I find there's still like, you kind of have to surf the channels and kind of keep up with things because, you know, it's governance and how are you guys doing that these days? Kalpa Tech, it's great.
Kalpa Tech's,
he does a great job. Shout out Adriana.
Yeah, shout out. That I just started using not long ago their Discord, not Discord, their Telegram bot to keep a track of Gov proposals. So basically every time a Gov proposal comes through, their bot picks it up and spits it out into your own personal channel in Telegram. Pretty handy. I check them like once every couple of days on all the networks we validate anyway, as my personal methodology, but it's good to get a prompt. You know, if I'm doing some other stuff and I forget about it, and then it comes up on the Kalpa Tech bot, incredibly handy. Yeah. So anyone else got any like tricks?
At Stakefish we have a custom. Sorry?
I use Zapier. It's
Zapier.
Like modular cloud type thing. And I have that watch the RSS feeds for GitHub releases.
Oh, yeah. So you actually watch the GitHubs for their actual tags.
Yeah. So as soon as there's a new tag, I know. And I'm like, all right, I've got a Gov proposal going to drop any minute now on whatever chain, you know. So
you should parlay that into a bot for Telegram.
I was doing that using Panic, which is for Telegram, and I found that to be kind of unreliable. Sometimes they just post tags whether they mean for it to be the next release or not. So it became one of those things where, like, I started paying attention to it, but there's so much basically false noise that I almost immediately started ignoring it. Probably within the first month of it setting it up.
If you're anything like Juno, you would have like 1,000 tags before we actually do a release.
Yeah.
So you're about to say on how do you do it at Stakefish?
Oh yeah, so we also have the tag tracker, but also for us, it's not that useful because sometimes something get tagged, but it's not time of the upgrade yet. So we have, of course, a governance tracking system that it's custom integrated with our business Slack. And we also use Discord, aggregating all the different announcement channel to a single one, and keep track of that also on Slack. Yeah, we use many tools, and in general, we have basically one dedicated person for like 9 networks or something. So it's a lot of manual work.
Yeah. One person per 9 networks. Is that what you said?
For now, it's like this, only because the protocol team is not that big, but we aim to expand. Yeah.
How many networks are Steakfish validating on?
Yeah, around 30.
30? Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do everything too. They're not going easy mode all Cosmos chains.
Yeah.
That's a big number. I know Schultz, I think it was Schultz. You guys used to or still have your Discord channel, which also aggregates the announcement channels of a lot of chains. Quite handy as well.
Honestly, I think that was a good idea to start, but with how many channels there are on there now, again, it just is basically completely turned into white noise. And some of the networks we don't even validate on. And so again, it's just one of those things that notifications pop up so frequently that aren't necessarily worth following, that again, it's just something that comes in and like, meh, mark red, move on.
Man, there's like so many bloody everyone tags. It's just so annoying that I think you should just, not do that. If people are subscribed to the channel or haven't muted the channel, and they obviously want the notifications, but why have it? It's a notification channel. Don't add everyone every time you do a bloody notification, because then you just wake up in the morning to 1,000 notifications and you're like, oh God, don't have 4 hours to read all these.
Yeah, exactly right. And the funny thing about that is that Zach from Easy Steak and I actually got into it once over me using @everyone, because there was a Genesis that was happening, and half the people got their Genesis wrong because I was just reviewing them. And I had everyone, I was like, hey, everyone got this wrong. You basically all need to go in here and fix this. And now I've come full circle, where now I've told people hey, you're @everything way too much, because he came in and shamed me for it. I'm like, well, I guess what's the quote? Live long enough to see yourself become the villain, something like that.
Definitely. It's very true, Schultz. It's guaranteed.
You have to be, yeah. I think you have to be, everyone just take this note. Be sparing with the goddamn everyone, or the here. Well, the here's not so bad because you probably subscribe to that channel if you get the here, but just think twice before doing the everyone, because it's fucking annoying. And I got chipped once for doing the everyone back in the day, and I don't think I've @everyone except for maybe 1 or 2 emergencies since. But yeah, man, it's just too many. So can kind of parlay into what we were going what we're going to talk about today. And I think we sort of came up with the idea that we might talk about security and people's various methods of validator security. So I know that, for example, Schultz and myself, or maybe no, sorry, that's Pokachu and myself sort of subscribe at the moment to about a similar model. Schultz, I'm not sure what you're using, and I can almost just assume that Todd is using sentries, and Dimmy, well, Steakfish would have probably sentries for every chain, and Jack is a Horcrux man, as far as I can tell. So we've all got
we are all Horcrux all day here at Strange Love. We are
Horcrux all the time.
All in on. Where did you guys go? Oh no, I lost you. There you are. Yeah, we are all in on threshold validation. Extremely important. I can sit here and talk about threshold validation for hours if you want.
So I think starting with me, because I'm happy to talk about it. I'm just I'm going to put down where we're at and where we're headed. And then maybe if we just do a quick round robin of the room, and if people are comfortable to talk about their security, you can give us a quick heads up of your method. So at King Nerds, when we first started out, we evaluated, people's security methodologies. We talked to a lot of different validators, asked them what they use. Found a lot of people were using sentries. I found a lot of people probably said they were using sentries and aren't. And others didn't use sentries. And so we were deciding whether or not to use sentries and trying to think of why we might, instead of just automatically using them, thinking of why we might use them. Because as a junior validator, we didn't have, a big budget to be spending on extra infrastructure at the time. And so we came up with the methodology that we would start out without sentries while we were like a low risk operation and not really a target of anyone. And then as we grew, we would look at implementing sentries. So further to that, I kept poking lots and lots of people and asking, the pros and cons. And in the end, we decided not to run sentries because we couldn't see, other than people trying to protect themselves from DOS attacks, we couldn't see a huge benefit for them if we're already being able to hit all of the blocks and not miss a sign. So, I mean, a lot of people use sentries as a way of getting global coverage so they don't miss any blocks when they're signing, and others are scared of DDoS, and others are scared of people being able to gain access to their box to get keys. So there's various ways to keep keys off your box, and there's also
I think that's like all of those are great reasons for sentries. Like this is why that's like the first, like, if you're going to run a validator, everyone says like don't do it on one node, and there's a lot of reasons why. And I think that the recent North Korean attacks on a couple of bridges are a great sort of harbinger of what's to come in this space. The internet is one giant PvP game, and we're going to see more and more of that. So don't run with one node. The easiest and first thing you can do is run multiple sentries. That provides reliability, an extra layer of security. If you're even if you're running a full node for your validator on a node that's completely disconnected from the internet and only connects to P2P through sentries, like that's one barrier. Somebody can still pwn your OS, get into your sentry, and then jump from your sentry to the back node in your, like, once they're in your protected environment. But like that's one. It's at least a really important one. And then the next step that you can take after that is either Horcrux or TMKMS. TMKMS is a great other step. That gives you a lot more operational flexibility. Once you divorce the sort of state verification function of validation from the signing function of validation, you have a lot of flexibility in your deployments that you didn't have before. And TMKMS with this sort of soft sign is like definitely the easiest way to do that. So like those are sort of the next steps. And then you can do kind of all kinds of fancy stuff in terms of, making sure that your OSs are automatically updating on all of your nodes to protect against the common set of attacks that come through these internet connected endpoints. What Dimi just led for the last Juno thing, security upgrades for the individual chains are extremely important. One thing that we as validators don't talk about a lot is those upgrades bring in new versions of Go continuously. They bring in new versions of the underlying HTTP libraries that often fix critical security vulnerabilities that would allow an attacker to get into your Go process, break out of that, and then into the host beyond that. Like many of these things, if you go read security reports of serious hacks, like it's a chain of vulnerabilities that are used to dive deeper and deeper into these systems. So the more and more sort of defense in depth you can put up as a validator operator, the better chance you have of resisting some of these attacks. And Horcrux is another one of those defense in depth. Right now, if you're somebody who's going to steal some Horcrux keys, you're going to have to get a couple layers into the validator. You're going to end up with these keys, and then you're going to have to write the cryptography to reconstitute the whole key.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of where Horcrux is going, and that's ultimately where we want to be, is running Horcrux. And I think it's probably the closest thing you're going to be able to get to being able to run like a 5.9s as well, because of the redundancy and the ability to sign on any node. So if you have one go down for any reason, like if the supplier goes down from the internet connection, one of the big problems is if your validator node is behind in terms of uptime, one of the biggest problems is if your validator node is on one supplier and you lose access to it because their internet's gone down, you stop missing blocks, but then you can't pick up on another spare node or use one of your sentries, because if you do and the other one comes back up and you're not quick enough to catch it, then you can potentially double sign and brick your node. Oh, you brick your validator, permajail your validator. So pretty tough situation when that happens and you don't have access. So something, as you mentioned, Jack, TKMS is a way to manage that, as well as Horcrux. So particularly around uptime, Horcrux is awesome, and security, Horcrux is awesome, and we can't wait to get onto it. We just have to do more testing. I think making the leap on the first network
scary
is
as fuck.
Yeah, scary, and setting it up for the first time is scary. And
the first time I did it, it was the polychain code. So it was like there were zero guardrails on that thing, and it wasn't even really tested. Like there were no tests. Like the polychain team handed it to me. They're like, "This is what we run. Like if you want to try it, go for it." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm cool. Like I can run this code." And I like played around with it a little bit. Like I spun up a couple local networks with it, and I was like, pretty sure this isn't going to double sign. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this hub upgrade. And it was the first not for zero height hub upgrade. So I've got this like priv validator state file that my like single node signer had prior to that. And I'm like looking at it and I'm like, okay, so like what height do I put in these state files on Horcrux? And there's like 2 state files on each node on all of these Horcrux clusters. And I'm sitting here SSH'd into all the machines, manually setting the height in all of these state files on Horcrux on this upgrade. And I turn the thing on and I'm like, and now I have to wait for 30 minutes for my hub nodes to come up because it was like a horrible startup. And so I'm just sitting there. I'm like, maybe I've already fucked myself. Like, I don't know. And I'm not going to know for another 30 minutes. It was so nail biting. But yeah, it's not nearly as bad as that now. And like, it's much better understood. So it's still scary though. And I think the instructions tell you to go out and take a walk or have a drink after you finish it.
I do. Yeah. I remember, I read the initial set of instructions like months ago. Certainly probably had updates since then, but it seemed like it was a nail-biting experience just reading the instructions.
Do we know who all is using Horcrux? Or is it just Strangelove that uses it entirely?
No. Oh, entirely? I know there's a few people who have publicly said they run it on a couple of networks. Coffee Validator runs it on all their networks. Larry from Delphi Digital runs it on at least 2 networks. There's a couple of Luna validators that I know that run it as well. Most of those Luna validators are like just validating Luna. So for whatever that's worth. And then I know there's a lot of folks like maybe running it on Chihuahua or Cerberus or some of these smaller chains to kind of test it. But I'd say there's probably like 5 or 6 other validators who run it for all their networks.
Yeah, the Telegram that you have for that, Jack. Yeah, you can. There's not a lot. And I think it's probably yeah, probably the same reason why I'm not there yet is the fear.
The fear.
I'm
Yes.
to jump soon. I've got the playbooks together. I've tested it on test nets.
Come.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, you're still a little choppy, but I can definitely hear you. Come join us, Todd. You come. It's good.
Yeah, the dark side. I'm on my way.
Yeah.
So Todd, jam that microphone up to your face and give us like the quick rundown on your setup if you're comfortable with it. I assume you're using sentries and go.
So my standard setup is 3 sentries in a validator. Validator and 1 sentry in the same data center, and then the other 2 on different providers. Some are
are you running like a say for the private network? Do you run like a WireGuard mesh, or do you just use firewalling?
I do actually use a WireGuard mesh, but I allow the nodes to talk directly to each other. I open up those ports between them.
And like whitelist the IPs or something like that?
Yeah, totally. Because running it over a private network requires you to turn on that feature. And I think that might actually be, you don't want to do that. I don't think you want to publish your private nodes in your address book, because then people can see that, right? Am I wrong there?
I think if you don't have peer exchange on, they don't gossip the private addresses. I could be wrong.
I mean, I guess you kind of have to be careful with it, but I had less reliability using WireGuard. I honestly see sentries a lot more like you said, how it ensures stability. So I've got a connection to another data center always. That's the big thing for me. And you were mentioning earlier about how you see downtime at a data center. They fuck up their BGP table and it's offline, right? Well, one way to help with that is I always configure my validator node to connect out on IPv6 and my sentries connect in on IPv4, and that's saved my ass on a number of data center outages, because usually the network goes down for IPv4 or IPv6, but not usually both, unless it's a hardware thing. So that helps a lot. Other security things. I think one thing a lot of people screw up is using Docker and UFW, which is the simplified firewall. And they don't realize that Docker, anything you publish on Docker gets put in the chain before UFW rules. So you got all these people running nodes out there in containers that have their RPC exposed and stuff like that. So, so I always use IP tables first of all. And, if the provider has a firewall, I use that as well. But let's see what else.
Todd, is you've got like an analytics type thing as one of your websites that from memory crawls open 2557 ports, right? For probably all these people fucking up with Docker.
So what's really strange is when you do a peer exchange, it gives you the RPC endpoint for the node. So and then you've got the IP address already. So if it's all zeros, I just try it and say, hey, give me your peer list, and that's how I build those maps. So yeah.
Probably also got the most robust list of RPCs in all of Cosmos.
Well, yeah, it's all that is done horribly. Actually, I don't actually have a list. It's all stored in memory, and then it's dumped out as a gob at the end. Just a big map. Let me see. What's Osmosis? I think is the biggest right now with 226 open RPC nodes.
Wow.
So, and
that's pretty massive.
So, oops.
I feel like you should share that list with Tom so we can add it to Restake.
Yeah.
Just extra nodes to use in case.
Yeah, load balance against it. Yeah.
Yeah, imagine that. Just taking everybody's open RPC and just load balancing it with like a smart balancer. It'd be like, and then just, that's the network's big RPC, super distributed.
It's honestly really not that bad of an idea. Like, if you're doing it for not bad things like restake, then do it. Let's just do it.
Testing purposes.
Yeah.
Dimmy, what are they doing over at Steakfish, man? You guys just sentry the world?
So I'm not sure how much I can share about the Steakfish infra, but yeah, we follow all the best practices. We have remote signers, and yeah, of course, the size of the infra depends also on the network we are going to validate and how much is delegated to the validator itself. But yeah, we always have a base layer of security that follows all the best practices, and maybe for some more like bigger networks, we also have some extra. One thing that I'm not sure if anybody else is using is the relayers, and I'm not speaking about relayers of IBC, but relayers between sentries and validator. I'm not sure if someone is still using that or.
I know a couple people.
What was that question, Dimmy?
Basically,
this is some next level shit right here.
Yeah, it's basically another layer. So you have the sentries that are connected to the world, the relayers that are connected only between the sentries and the validator, and then you have the validator itself. And it was quite a common thing in the early stage of Cosmos Hub. Right now, I'm not sure how many people is still doing that, and I'm not even sure if it's like useful or not.
I mean, it's another layer of defense.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I know Polychain was. I think Occlusion still does. Anyway.
And what about Dimmy Validator?
My validator, yeah, I also follow the best practices. I have sentries almost everywhere I validate. Yeah, except one network, I'm not going to tell you which, but it's like not profitable. So one node is more than enough. And
so do you try to keep those light with state syncing and stuff like that?
So I always use default pruning. Like I don't like to have pruning everything or to state sync and not have the full history. I'm not going
even on your sentries.
Yeah. I do have default almost everywhere, and I also have some like totally separated node that I use maybe as archive or even more history. Like I don't like to run my validator on some pruned state. I prefer to have all the history. So yeah, this is my setup. All my sentries have default pruning and also the validator.
Interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually started bringing up a bunch of archive nodes just for taxes. So
yeah, Todd, you and me both. I maintain full archives separate from my validator on every network I run on, and then I'm only keeping the last state of the network on the sentries. So like real thin.
So with Jack, with your hang on, sentries, Horcrux. You have sentries and Horcrux?
Yeah. So we do our setup. I'll just tell you the whole thing because we've open sourced it and it's publicly available for anyone who wants to give it a try. We use Google Compute for our cloud, and we use their GKE product, the Google Kubernetes engine. We have two separate Kubernetes clusters. So one Kubernetes cluster is 3 machines underneath it, and we do 3 sentries on top of that. So 1 sentry on each machine. And those sentries are state synced on networks where it's available. We use snapshots for networks where it's not. And those sentries are only keeping the latest state and then throwing out anything new. There's no indexes. We keep them literally as thin as possible. And on that cluster, the only port that's available is 26656. The Kubernetes control plane is private. Everything else is private. The only thing that's open on the internet is 26656. And then we have, how dare you not use Akash? I know, Adam. I know. Very not on brand for me. It's sad for me too. And then we have the Horcrux cluster, and the Horcrux cluster actually reaches out to the Tendermint instances to connect. So the Horcrux cluster does not have any open ports. It's an entirely separate cluster, and it's even more locked down than the other cluster. And in fact, there's a jump box that's also incredibly locked down that is the only box that has access to the Kubernetes API for that cluster. So a defense in depth type setup.
So you've got your Horcrux swarms. Let me just see if I got this understood. So you've got your Horcrux swarm under a couple of layers. And then you've got, so when you say sentries, they are all of your nodes that can potentially sign.
So here's how it works. All three of those nodes are connected to the P2P network. They all are validated. They're all like flagged as validators. We turn that priv-val thing on. And what that does is it opens a port on the Tendermint instance. That port is only available to the Horcrux cluster. So when Tendermint starts up, it waits for 5 seconds for something to contact it and say, hey, I've got a pub key. And once that happens, then it's connected to the Horcrux cluster in the back. So the nodes start up, the Horcrux cluster sends the pub key to them, and then they know what validator they are.
Yeah, so it was just the terminology between So your validators are your sentries, essentially. Yeah. So there's just because the terminology just when you traditionally think about what a sentry and what a validator is, and then it's sort of mixed together in that in that sense. Yeah. So you're not having like your cluster of like nodes that can sign with the pub key from your Horcrux swarm. Then behind like another layer of sentries, they're the same thing where all of them can sign. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could, do another layer like Demi was talking about with the relay nodes. There's a number of things you can do there. What my thought on the scaling of this is to auto scale the cluster. Also, there's a change coming to the Tendermint priv-val where instead of the Tendermint instance opening up a server that then waits for the pub key request, the priv-val server is going to have to open up a server, and Tendermint is going to reach out to that via a gRPC thing. So we're going to be doing that gRPC conversion and rejiggering our architecture a little bit. But yeah, that's how that works. Where was I going with that? I had a point there.
Well, I have two questions.
Yeah.
One on is that pretty cost effective on Google Cloud to do it that way, considering how thin those nodes are on the Kubernetes cluster? And
is it cost effective? Like, we are still profitable on all the networks we run on. I'll say that.
Make 5 cents.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is it really expensive
No.
in comparison to like a traditional setup?
No, I don't think it's crazy expensive. I used to run them just on raw VMs, and like the price on the additional cost for the Kubernetes cluster is minimal for Google. That's pretty minimal. What the additional cost is like on osmosis, we have to run the pricey CPUs. And, if you want to run the expensive disks, then that's like a 10x increase in the monthly cost. I think we're running like, I'm going to quote you a number and I feel like it's off by $100 or so, but I think it's like about $650 a month for the 3-node setup. It's sort of standard config for us. That's kind of in my mind, what the number is for what a validator costs a month for us to run one.
And the second question is, do you feel like a degen not having history on your validators?
No.
No? You're good?
Yeah.
So obviously you keep your own separate
Archives.
like you said, archive nodes. And is that on like junk hardware? Or is that
yeah, I mean they're generally run on cheap hardware. Again, some of these you do have to run them on fairly expensive hardware just to keep up with chain tip. So, that's like those archives are a fucking beast. We actually run 3 different classes of nodes. So we have the super thin sentries, and then we have relayer nodes. Those relayer nodes keep an unbonding period of data. And then we have the full archives for, as Todd mentioned, paying the federal government. So yeah, that's kind of our setup.
Schultzy, man, we haven't got to you.
I mean, so while I appreciate the conversation we're having here, I guess let me go through first what we do, and then I'll kind of do my caveat. So, no. So I guess I'll just jump right into it. So basically, we're talking about like sentries. We're talking about like validator-specific best practices. But one thing we haven't really touched on is in most docs you see on anything, you see that you're supposed to use like the root user for your validator, right? But the reality is, I don't think many of us that are experienced use root. But a lot of the docs assume you use root, and all docs are written for it. And then in order to know, go ahead.
No docs I've ever written have.
All right, that's fair. But most that you encounter do, because if you then add in the complexity of saying, okay, you should have this user created, then it just adds one more layer of complexity to creating the docs. But I think it's tough because a lot of the validators that spin up are still using root, and they don't know to actually turn on even their UFW settings as the very base level of protection, right? So there's just 2 things that I can guarantee you fewer than 50% of validators use. One, users, or you could even go so far as to doing it so that users, the specific user doesn't have sudo access, because you could have it such that a user doesn't have sudo access, it does all the files, and then you go into root or some other user that has sudo access to that, it starts up the machine itself, right? A lot of people don't do anything like that. They're just using root. They have no firewall settings. Now, they probably have the benefit of not having their RPC open, because you have to manually make that change for most networks to actually open it. But otherwise, they're open to the world, full stop. And so we're having this conversation about, what best practice are we doing? But I don't think that's the most effective conversation to have to make it the best conversation to have. We're talking like the advanced stuff. We should just be talking very low level stuff. Hey, whenever you start up your machine, update everything. Just update your security things, restart if you need to. Great. After that, then you create a new user, don't use root, and then log into that and do everything from there. And then add a password, turn off password logging in, only use SSH keys, blah, 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 blah. Use YubiKey in order to lock your SSH key, things like that. So there's this entire conversation to be had that honestly should be written as a Medium article or something.
Yeah. Like
people love relayer validator Medium articles.
How about Schultz? I'd be happy to collaborate with you on that, because there should be a best practice for lower spec. When I say lower spec, I mean general validators like you're trying to get to, because there is the extreme level like Jack, which is on the tip of the security spear. There's security professionals like Todd, who just couldn't possibly see himself not doing things a certain way. But then there's there's a lot of entry level validators, and there's a lot of mid-tier validators that either don't have the resources to provide that, or don't have experience to know those best practices in the lower space. And I think you're hitting the nail right on the head with there's just so many basic things you can do to protect yourself from the outside world. And for the most part, even if you've just locked it down to your P2P port and your and even if you do have SSH open, which is not a good idea, but when was the last time there was a 0-day on SSH if you've configured it properly with no root and certificates? So there are a few things you can do to get yourself set up more protected than just, YOLOing in with root and copy pasting yourself to glory.
Exactly right. And, to be perfectly honest, so I come from a software engineering degree, and so I'm happy to go write code, but I didn't know too much about Linux. I use Linux daily because that's where a lot of code is written, but that doesn't mean I knew security practices. So for my first network, I was one of those people who just copy pasted in. And then I was like, well, hold on. This doesn't seem like it's quite right. Like locking straight into root doesn't seem quite right. Or if you're using Contabo, I think you're defaulted to Ubuntu. And then I stumbled upon, Jack, I think I have you to blame for the Sentry node architecture, right?
Yeah.
It's your article from 2018, right?
Funny enough, I posted that article. Greg from fucking Cephalopod wrote it. But yeah, I have been the Sentry node advocate. You can blame me. Yeah, that's fine.
I didn't realize you weren't the one that wrote this. Yeah.
No one does. This is probably the first time I think I've said it on podcasts before, but no one ever remembers. So I was like, oh, it's Jack. And I'm like, yeah, they kind of, I guess. Yeah, I posted it. Greg didn't want to create a forum account because he didn't want more accounts. So he was like, Jack, can you post this for me? But yeah.
Greg from Akash?
No, Greg from a Greg that nobody knows, the Greg behind Cephalopod.
Oh, Cephalopod, yeah.
Yeah.
I reached out to Greg to get him on the show here in the next couple of weeks, so hopefully we've got that coming up.
Greg from Akash, that is. From
Akash, yeah. Quick plug. Don't know what we're going to talk about, but I hit him up anyway. I guess Akash. So anyway, sorry, Schulte. I don't believe you really finished your story before I butted in and started agreeing with you.
Yeah, I guess that's the end of it, really, is that, there's so many small things that can be done before we talk about sentries, before we talk about Horcrux, before we talk about TMKMS, that would be far more beneficial for, let's say, the everyman validator, rather than us hardcore extreme. I'm on 25 networks or run 25. Extreme. Exactly right.
Do you think we should provide some documentation, like tutorial how to put some base layer security to your nodes?
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that we need to work on, Schulte. Yeah, because it is very important, and I think it probably should be prominent in network documentation, even if it's just a link to something that validators have collaborated on. Just as if you're gonna YOLO into being a validator, here's some baseline security that you should probably observe. And from the documentation perspective, for networks, I guess it's kind of assumed that. Well, I've always just assumed. I don't actually know if I'm specifically right to make a non-privileged user, but I guess I've just always assumed that people would be using a non-privileged user, and that's why I always write sudo, just assuming that they are. But I guess that works the same as if you just have root and write sudo. You just don't have to type a password if you've got password in sudo. So
yeah, basically right. You just bypass it.
Yeah. So kind of important and kind of not addressed anywhere really.
Okay. So
that I'm aware of.
I've signed myself up to begin a Medium article. Got it. All right.
But I'd happily work through that with you, man. There might be things that both of us do. There might be things that either of us do or what have you. So as base layer security.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. I was done, Todd. I've been talking forever.
I find that automation really helps with this stuff because it's so hard to be consistent every time. If you're running somewhere, I think it's somewhere around 20 nodes, it starts to get to the point where you can't always remember what you've done where. And having automation tools to build that stuff, be it, if you're doing it in the cloud, something like Terraform, or I do a lot of hardware, so I use Ansible. But having the security built into your playbooks is a great way to ensure that it's always done right. Because I can't tell you, before I started automating stuff, how many times I went and I was like, oh shit, my RPC's exposed on my validator. I'm, stuff like that, and it's like, so having a little bit of DevOps experience helps a lot with the security aspects. And every time you make a mistake, you just put it in the playbook, and then you won't make the mistake twice. So
infrastructure is code. Shout out Todd. Mateo says one of the better validator articles is from Todd. So take some notes, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, Todd has single-handedly made our lives at Lavender 5 much better on multiple occasions with tender duty. Even just today, he was helping me debug something that was going sideways. But there have been many times where that's saved us.
Tender duty, I'm assuming, has saved my life.
It's hilarious because it's like 200 lines of code. It's like
it's so simple.
The best things are.
Right? So.
Yeah, man. But like, huge shout out to that piece of. I resisted it at first. And then once I used it, I was like, why did I not get on this train earlier? It's just the most simple but most effective piece of and it's like the first line of not security, but the first line of knowing whether or not you're signing. It's like the base layer fundamental thing. Did you sign the block? No. Here's a warning. So it's like, there might be things going wrong with your box beforehand, which hopefully you'd pick up in other with other monitoring and alerting. But if it comes down to it, and then that's, everything else fails, and then that's the last line of defense. Like, did you sign the thing? No. Here's a warning.
As a validator, you have one job.
Sign blocks.
Gotta keep a key online and secure. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so what, if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves for a second, I have to figure out where we go.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, I mean, the phrase "not here" to direct traffic. So usually when we stall, he keeps the things going, but I can't remember what the things are, so I need to go back and look.
Do we have some fun sound effects? Can you just can you make sound effects happen?
Well, last time I made any sound on here, we got what do they call it on YouTube when you get
like bandas?
Yeah, we had to just DMCA'd. Yeah, we had to just make a big blank bit in there when I pulled up a meme. And,
at least we didn't get shadow banned.
That's a Twitter thing, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a rumor. Is it real? Who knows? Jay was claiming he's been shadow banned.
A question we've had from I'm not sure whether this came through YouTube or Twitter. And I think we might have almost asked it last week. So can you run a validator with no coding experience? Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
Ooh, I could definitely take a stab at that. Now, I do have coding experience, but I've helped numerous validators get started that have had no coding experience. I think really the only thing that's required is some level of curiosity. I think that's the thing that really sets you up for success is setting up the validator. At this point, I can set up a new node in, let's say 5 minutes, but even that feels like a long time for what it can take. Your first time, it might take 12 hours. You're running 8 lines that you copy and pasted. Somehow it takes you 12 hours and you don't know how. But as long as you're curious and you keep going, you can totally do it without coding experience.
Pain.
I am confident that if you jump onto the Uni 2 test network on Juno, you can not even have bloody experience in a CLI and have a node up within half an hour.
Is there do you have a link? to the Uni 2 stuff? I have one of my lawyer friends is interested.
Yeah, man. I'll pull it up while we're talking.
Yeah.
To that end, I want to actually talk about Uni 2 a little bit.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, sorry for interrupting. Uni 2, so that's Juno's testnet. One of the things that Juno does especially well is the orchestration of their testnet. And I think that's really what sets Juno up for success. There was the transition, but I think basically the transition between Uni 1 and Uni 2 was, I think, what created a lot of us is good validators, because it was something of a gauntlet of issues that we found and security holes. And so we were breaking it like daily. There was like 6 back-to-back Genesis transactions. There were issues that somehow we just kept working through. It was almost like a boot camp. And it's not like that anymore. You're not expected to be there 12 hours a day every day anymore. But during that one transition period, all led by the Fray, that made me certainly a far better validator than I was before that.
That is the best way to get better at validation, is to deal with crisis. Like, yeah, because that is the hard part of validation. The hard part of validation is not like sitting there calmly trying to get your node up, and then you're like, how do I connect to this peer-to-peer network? Or like, how long does this thing take to sync? Which is always something that newcomers are shocked by, and like, why doesn't my computer just work immediately?
Yeah, Ethereum.
Yeah, I know. But it's like when Demi is like desperately trying to find you on Telegram, and it's like, did you upgrade your binary to version 2.5.6? Because if you didn't, you're fucked. Like that's that real validator shit right there.
Tell me, the days before governance upgrades must have been enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was very funny.
I liked it. I thought it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I think Demi did too.
I imagine that's why Demi's so good with the spreadsheets for like readiness, the readiness spreadsheet. Oh, yeah. You can bust out one of those in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's like got to.
Yeah, that was a throwback.
I tell you what is good about test networks for anyone who is looking to like become a validator that watches this, or looking for information like how to become a better validator, besides the information that other validators put out to help new people, is that if you can help it, don't go straight to a mainnet. Like, you know, a lot of people YOLO into some low value mainnets, or even high value mainnets if they can get a gathering, but recommend just jump in and spend a little while at least in a test net, because you can do things in a test net that you can't do in a mainnet. You can attack yourself. You can beat yourself up. You can ask other people to beat you up. You can, spam transactions. You can try to break things without annoying people. There's just so much more stuff you can do to test your own skills, and also to benefit the network by testing the network. So if I had any advice for anyone who wants to become a validator, play around in test nets, get familiar. Don't just YOLO straight into a mainnet, because it's not yourself. Even if you are proficient in like Linux or whatever you need to run that network, it's not just your money. If you get jailed or you double sign yourself accidentally, then that's other people's funds that you're playing around with as well. So
yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we went through on Uni was fantastic. You know, killing a network by messing up state on a bunch of validators trying to recover from a bad block.
To be fair, we did that on mainnet as well. So
that's a little different, but yeah, but I mean, when the Evmos thing was happening, people started seeing the same things, and I was like, dude, you're screwed. Just turn off your node and wait for somebody else to start signing blocks, and if you don't do that, you're going to double sign. And then what happened? Everybody double signed. So
I remember you saying that in the I'm pretty sure you said that in the chat. You said like, Anyone who's
I'm not a validator there, but I was chatting with some of you guys somewhere else, and somebody mentioned that they were seeing this error, and it's like, that's what happened on Juno. Just stop your node now. Just stop your node. You're dead until there's a new block. So.
When is Evmos going to come back? Can we
Tuesday
26th.
26.
Let's go. Come on. Yeah. Want to see it.
So in there it was they literally were telling people in the validator chat to resync your node after you would put down a signature, and then explosions happened. But man, I believe that I don't think I don't remember seeing any public announcement yet that it's coming back on Tuesday, but I believe it came from the last community call that it's coming back on the 26th. Is what I am gathering. I made a tweet about it, but to be fair, I copied it from friends.
As well. So.
What's that, Dimmy?
I didn't saw any official announcement as well.
No, so only a few validators have tweeted about it that I've seen, and I think it was from the last community call. I tweeted about it, but I copied it from friends. So if it's wrong, blame friends, not me. Just retweeting the news, people. Retweeting the news.
That's high quality journalism.
Yeah, that's how it happens now, right? Someone makes a tweet and then CNN picks it up. So we usually round out with, and I think we're at about an hour. This is where we try to start to round out these episodes. We usually try to round out with a question again, and it is, what are you most excited about this week upcoming? So you start with you, Dimmy, if you've got something you're excited about, man.
About the row calculator. I hope to think today or tomorrow. Yeah.
I think you're not the only person who's excited for you to finish the raw calculator. I think a lot of people want to get on there and bang their address.
And I know there is also a lot of people that are unhappy for some decisions that have been made, but I can tell to them that there will be a DAO, so we can do something later as well.
Potentially do something later.
Of course.
Don't write checks you can't cash, man. So
win raw. Demi, do you want to talk snapshots?
I think he's
God, no, please make it stop.
Oh, no.
So, Demi, is it going to be
he's like, I'm just taking snapshots right now. I'm like, I got it on this other screen over here. I'm just snapshotting. We're
months of snapshots.
Guys, just snapshots.
So is it going to be a just put in your one address and done job? You can put in any address from all over the cosmos and it'll just reduce it back to the hex and then go from there?
It will be similar to Neta. So there will be a page, you connect your wallet, you claim. That's it. If you add multiple wallets, of course, you have multiple claim to do. Yep.
Awesome. Schultzy, man, you got excitement?
So I'm actually really excited for the Secret Network upgrade next week. I've been here since Secret 2 and we're at Secret 4 right now, and this will be the first upgrade that doesn't require a hard fork. And that sounds pretty minor, but I'm pretty stoked about it.
Schultzy, after we did, I'll just say 20, on the order of 20, for the first upgrade where it didn't require a hard fork, I was just like, this isn't even an upgrade. What is this? So easy.
Yeah, Asaf.
It feels good.
It really does. Asaf sent me the instructions to review before he posted them, and it was the normal 6 steps, fetch GitHub, make install, restart node. Okay, you're done. I was like, oh man, this is great.
This is fantastic. I could do that all day. Also, shout out Asaf. He was the one who finally root caused the contract issue on Juno.
Yeah, Asaf is absolutely fantastic. I interacted with him fairly frequently, and every single time he's just fantastic. He's such a great person to work with.
He's awesome.
We should get him on here one day, Schultzy.
Ooh, he might IP into that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd love to have Asaf on. That'd be fantastic. All right,
Jack, you looking forward to something, man?
You're
not done yet, bro. Yeah.
I'm not done yet? Fuck.
No,
is the work ever done? Am I looking forward to something? I don't know. We're making chicken cassoulet tonight. So we got some chicken. We got some chicken broth. We got some beans. We got some mirepoix. Just doing the thing. So that's what I'm looking forward to tonight.
Struggle to remember to eat. That sounds delicious.
I have not eaten a lot today. So I did to get some eggs around noon, which is like better than nothing, right?
Like a boiled egg?
Oh, no. I made some sausage and eggs. Scrambled. I prefer mine scrambled, personally.
Cool.
If I'm feeling really spicy, I'll fry one. That's, yeah.
Todd.
Oh,
how you going?
Man, I'm just glad I'm not sitting around trying to balance ledgers to figure out how much I earned for my greedy uncle. So,
yeah, you're looking forward to not have to do any tax calculations.
Well, I've got a lot of work to do yet.
Still slogging away at it.
Yeah, but it's nice that I can take a break for a few days, and I got my estimate in. It's probably right. I don't think I'm going to jail. It's all good.
Our tax isn't due until the end of our tax year finishes at the end of June, and then it's not due till like May the next year. But so May's coming up, so I'm still doing tax from a year ago, and I put on a crypto bookkeeper to figure it out. Because it's just completely lost track. It was actually I degened a bit in Define, and it's just like so hard to figure out that I just had to get a bookkeeper, man. I just don't have the time. Anyway, so I guess what am I excited about? Oh, I was talking to Juice Labs. Deuce Labs yesterday, and I can tell you that I am excited about Juno tools being released whenever they get released.
Oh, it's ready.
Yeah, it's ready. And so when it goes mainnet, I'm excited. So I can drop the bloody King token and people can stop asking me about it. Because it's got the Merkle drop built in, and I've been waiting and copying so much shit.
King shit.
Just been getting hosed by everyone. When King, it's coming.
I'm personally really excited about Juno Tools. Shout out Strange Love Engineering team who built the front end there. It's been exciting.
Did they? Oh yeah. So sorry, I just gave credit to Juice Labs, but can you tell us who's involved other than those guys?
Juice Labs and then the Strange Love Engineering. Juice Labs built the first version of the front end, and then we came in, did some design on it, helped them with a logo, built out a lot of the functionality on the front end, and they kind of focused on the smart contracts. So yeah, Strange Love. If you need front end engineering, holler at your boy.
So I just walked through that yesterday with Finn, the front end, and he walked me through it, man. It's pretty slick.
Greco crushed it. He did a great job with it. And then my buddy Max did the logo and the visual design.
It is very nice. Actually, the logo is super crisp. Like, it's just, I don't know how it is so crisp, but it's crisper than what anything else displays on my monitor. And then the logo is just like, it almost stands out of the page a little bit. I don't know how you did it, but
Max is a great visual designer. I love his stuff. I've known Max for, I'm about to say the number 15 years, and we went to college together. So anyway, yeah, it's been a while.
Well, man, he's knocked it out of the park. So I guess that probably brings us to a close for today, unless anyone's got any final words.
It's some strange coincidence that Pupmos is here, but Javi isn't.
Yeah, what a coincidence. The alter ego coming out. Thanks, everybody, for coming.